This is the inside of a kiln, and yeah, a kiln like you fire ceramics in. And this is one that actually Dorothy and I have walked inside of. It's one that we were introduced to by our daughter Anne. Why? Well, Anne is into art, ceramic arts. She actually sells ceramic art sculptures, and she took us to this place. It's up in Helena, Montana, and this place actually isn't a ceramic arts place in its origination. It started out as a brick manufacturer up in Montana, and in fact, it got established as a brick maker before Montana became a state. So back in the 1880s, they did this, and because there's something about Helena, Montana, where this is. It's a nice co-regional place where you have both lots of muddy clay and fuel in terms of timber to be able to fire these. So this place started off in the 1880s, called the Western Clay Manufacturing Company in Helena, Montana, and this is called a beehive kiln. And to this very day, they have almost a dozen of these beehive kilns that are up there, with bricks made by themselves. They had small kilns, they made bricks, they made bigger kilns, and these beehive kilns are kind of like igloos. They just build them until they touch at the top, and then they support themselves once they're all the way up. Here's a view from the outside of it, and these kilns still exist. They had a problem making these kilns because the bricks started to kind of sometimes would push out from the inside due to the weight. So there's big steel bands around it to kind of hold it in like belts. But on the sides here, you'll see right here, there's an entry into the kiln. There's a gas pipe there. There's one over here, and it feeds gas in from like 6 or 8 sides. And it just, the entire inside of this kiln gets hot enough that the clay turns into ceramic. It's kind of cool. Today, it's an art institute. So the brick factory kind of went out of business in 1960, but the guy who was running it and owned it from 1930 up to 1960, he was a big aficionado of the arts. So by the time the brick manufacturing stopped, he says, I want this place to be a place where aspiring artists in ceramic arts can come and make creations and kiln their stuff and have residences here. So they turned it into kind of a residence ceramic arts center. Arguably the most famous one in the world. It's up in Helena, Montana. So ceramic artists from all over the world come to stay in residence at, it's called the Bray, because the guy who ran this brick factory and is the guy who started the art side of it is named Archie Bray. And so it's the Archie Bray Foundation. They run this as an art place. And our daughter works there. It's a plug. Yeah, see, it was coming. Yeah. But it's a fascinating place because the brick manufacturing occupied 26 acres up there. Still does. It's a huge layout with many of these kilns up there, many storage and warehouse buildings, many of them built in the 1890s and then refurbished around the turn of the century, and many of them added to in the 1920s and 30s. So when you go on the campus of this place, it does not look modern at all. It looks kind of like a ghost town of bricks. And since it became an art institute, then the resident artists who've come and worked there and made creations, when they can only be there for a while. And then when they leave, many of them leave their best creations scattered around the campus of this old, decrepit brick manufacturing place. So you walk around in the campus, these 26 acres, you walk around and you turn past a corner on a really old building that was built maybe in 1900. And then in the bushes, there's this creature sitting there. And you go, whoa, what is that? And as you walk around, it's just like a discovery of all these pieces that people have made over the years. It's a fascinating place. It's a fascinating place. This is what it looks like from the outside. There's one of the beehive kilns right there. And this beehive kiln that has this chimney next to it is actually part of their logo now. So it's a pretty cool place. It's a pretty cool place. Here they are back in the 1930s. Now, I don't know what he's shoveling because they fired him with natural gas even back then. You would think he's shoveling coal like you see when, train engines. But that's not what's going on. So I don't know what that is, but that's the beehive kilns. And it's actually the very same one. You can actually see the same gas attachments right there. So why are we talking about this? Sorry, guys, it was kind of hot in the furnace. I just needed to cool down for a minute. That's right. So we're talking about the furnace issue. We got there last week. We didn't finish it. Well, we did sort of finish it. There's a PS to it we're going to start with today. But if you remember, just to catch up if you weren't here, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they were thrown into the fiery furnace. They were saved. A fourth person joined them, looked like Jesus, who looked like a son of the gods, quote unquote, Nebuchadnezzar. How can someone look like the son of the gods in the middle of a burning furnace inside? Because he's brighter than the flames, which is astonishing. They get delivered. Nebuchadnezzar is blown away. By the way, many times, I never really realized this, why did they have a fiery furnace that you could step into? They made bricks in Babylon. The very things I just showed you, that's what they did. In fact, to this very day, there are archaeological digs that are in, quote unquote, Babylon of Iraq. And they've uncovered the great Ishtar Gate, the walls of Babylon, all those things, built by none other than Nebuchadnezzar II, the Nebuchadnezzar in this story. And when you look at this, these are not limestone, limestone slabs like you have in Israel, because they don't have any hard stone in the Mesopotamian Valley, because it's a big river valley of the Tigris Euphrates River. There are no stones to make anything. So what do you do to build buildings? Bricks. There's muddy clay on the sides of the Tigris and Euphrates. So if you go today, probably unlikely, but if you go today to Iraq to a tourist to see the digs it's actually near Baghdad, it's south of Baghdad, of Babylon, you will see unearthed earthen bricks that are made in these furnaces. The very same style as I just showed you that are up in Helena, Montana. Same thing. So that's why they had furnaces that were big enough to walk people into, because they made bricks. In fact, later, and we'll get to this in a little bit, when Nebuchadnezzar goes out of power, it's because Babylon gets taken over by the Persians, the Medes and the Persians. And Darius is one of the kings. Darius actually has written down, we've seen it in cuneiform, Darius writes, who made all these bricks? And he says, the Babylonians. They made all these bricks. So that's what these furnaces are. It's for that. How's that for a long intro to the story today? If you make it to Helena, go check it out. It's a fabulous place. It's free just to go and walk around. Fabulous place. Well, we are in part 8 of Daniel, and there's a repercussion. I said we didn't quite finish the furnace story. Yes, they were delivered, but we didn't quite finish the reaction that Nebuchadnezzar himself had as a result of this miraculous saving. I mean, just miraculous. And that's actually the start of what we're going to look at today. It's the beginning of chapter 4. So this is his reaction still about the great fiery furnace thing. King Nebuchadnezzar, to all the peoples, nations, and languages that dwell on the earth, he made a proclamation. So here's the proclamation. You know what he said as a result of the fiery furnace? This is what he told the world. The world. He said, peace be multiplied to you. It has seemed good to me to show the signs and wonders that the Most High God has done for me. The Most High God. Now, we mentioned last time that he's not a full believer in the God of Israel, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because he thinks there's lots of gods. That's his problem. But at least he admits here that the God of Israel seems to be the chief dude of all the gods. He's the Most High God. So he makes this proclamation to all the peoples. Now, when we talk about all the peoples of the world, we're talking about everyone that's part of the Babylonian kingdom, which stretches all the way from Greece into India and up to Persia, the Caspian, and Black Seas, down into Egypt. I mean, everything you think of when you think of the Middle East plus, that's Babylon. So he sends this proclamation to everyone. I want you to know about the Most High God, what he's done for me. And the proclamation goes on. How great are his signs, how mighty his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion endures from generation to generation. Amen and amen. I added that part. So it's interesting. The guy he's the chief person. He is the ruler of the world right now, Nebuchadnezzar is. Superpower. The superpower chief of the entire world gives assent to the fact that there is a great high God. His kingdom, is unlike my kingdom, is everlasting. His dominion, unlike my dominion, is to all generations. I mean, that's just like, it's exactly what you'd want to have as an outcome from the fiery furnace episode. So, woohoo! Nebuchadnezzar, he's in. Sort of. Sort of. I mean, after all of that, Nebuchadnezzar still is, yeah. And we'll see that today. So let's leave the fiery furnace behind, and we'll go to this. Here's his nice overstuffed couch. And this is how the next section starts out. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at ease in my house and prospering in my palace. And I thought, what kind of picture for me really celebrates being ease in my house? Laying on my couch. Yeah. So this is my picture in my mind. It's probably speculation on my part, but when Nebuchadnezzar says that, I'm seeing him laying on a couch, snoozing. But problem is, every time Nebuchadnezzar sleeps, he has dreams. And this time, he has another dream. And it disturbs him greatly. So this is what it says, Daniel 4:5. I saw a dream that made me afraid. As I lay in bed, the fancies and the visions of my head alarmed me. Well, this isn't quite as strongly worded as the previous time, but it's bad. It's bad. So if you can stand it, we're up for another dream today. Okay, we'll do it. Okay, here we go. Here's his dream. So, and at this point, it's interesting. The narrative is in the first person, written in the first person of Nebuchadnezzar, like he's actually dictating this to a scribe. It's fascinating. So I made a decree that all the wise men of Babylon should be brought before me, that they might make known to me the interpretation of the dream. So here we go again with the wise guys, or with the wise men. 7. So then the magicians, the enchanters, the Chaldeans, which is another name for native Babylonians, and the astrologers, they all came in. And I told them the dream. He wasn't supposed to do that, but this time he did. Remember last time he didn't tell him the dream? He said, I'll believe your interpretation if you tell me the dream. Well, it's not fair. You're supposed to tell us the dream. We tell you the dream. No. Remember that? They got in a lot of trouble because they almost got killed because of that. This time he doesn't do that. He just says, okay, here's the dream. Here's the dream. But they couldn't make known to me its interpretation. They couldn't do it. So at last Daniel came in before me. As we remember from chapter 1, Daniel is gifted by God along with his friends. But Daniel is gifted with the ability to be able to interpret dreams. So this is what he's made for. So Nebuchadnezzar adds as a little insert right here. Who's Daniel? Well, he who is named Belteshazzar after the name of my God, and in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. See, he's not one godish yet. But he does recognize the fact that there's something special happening with Daniel. Something special that his other guys don't have. So I told him the dream, saying, O Belteshazzar, chief of the magicians, because I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in you, and that no mystery is too difficult for you, tell me the visions of my dream that I saw and their interpretation. So it seems like he's asking him a little bit to tell him the dream before he tells him the dream, but he does tell him the dream. Yeah, I don't quite get it. But he does recognize, Nebuchadnezzar recognizes there's something special with Belteshazzar, the name of Daniel, but because he has some kind of special connection with the holy gods. So, yeah, Nebuchadnezzar's not quite there yet. Okay, so let's go dreamland. So, the visions of my head as I lay in bed were these. So he spells them out to Daniel. So here's the vision. You ready? There's the drum roll. Here's the vision. Yeah, not too exciting. It's a tree. What? It's a tree. Pretty darn scary, eh? No, not very scary. So I saw, and behold, a tree in the midst of the earth, and its height was great. Huge. Its height was great. And the tree grew and became strong, and its top reached to heaven, and it was visible to the end of the whole earth. Oh, that's a tree. Its leaves were beautiful, its fruit abundant, and in it was food for all. By the way, many times when we think trees, we think like structural lumber trees, like the trees of the Northwest, like Douglas fir and stuff like that, or the cedars of Lebanon. That's not the picture here. The picture here is a tree that makes food. And one of my favorite food-making trees in the Middle East is a fig tree. And I did a whole morning on fig trees once. And I got letters about that and pictures of figs. And then shortly after there, gifts of figs. Figs are great. But anyway, also one of my favorite trees that makes food is a date palm. Because if you have a date from a date palm, both of these are like extraordinarily sweet. So it's like picking candy for free off a tree. Anyway, that's what we're thinking of right here. So there's fruit abundant in it. There's food for all, for all. The beasts of the field found shade under it. You know, because there's oppressive sun in the Middle East. The beasts of the field found shade under it. The birds of the heavens, they lived in its branches. And all flesh was fed from it. This is a nice tree. It feeds everybody and gives shade and gives you a place to perch and be safe. It's a great thing. It's a great thing. 13. So I saw in the visions of my head as I lay in my bed, and behold, a watcher, a holy one, came down from heaven. So up till now, there's nothing scary in this dream. It's just a really big, wonderful tree. A big, wonderful tree. Do you remember that short ditty written by Shel Silverstein about the tree, the giving tree? Kind of like that, but much, much better. Much, much better. But this watcher, this holy one, came down from heaven. Okay, this is kind of getting weird. And he proclaimed aloud and said this, chop down the tree and lop off its branches, strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the beasts flee from under it and the birds from its branches. Okay, now it's getting scary. What? Some watcher, some holy one from heaven comes down and says, chop this thing down. Chop it down? Chop it down? And it goes on. But leave the stump of its roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze amid the tender grass of the field. So don't uproot it completely, but chop it down. And when they wanted to preserve a workplace back in the time, a place to do things, they would take that stump, they'd flatten it out and make it level, and they'd band it so it wouldn't fall apart with time. So it's a way of just saying, we want to preserve the stump and the roots, but we're going to use it for something else because as a tree, it's done. It's just done. But there's some kind of preservation going on. Okay, and then this watcher says more. Let him be wet with the dew of heaven. What? Let his portion be with the beasts in the grass of the earth. What? You're just going to have to keep that in your hip pocket for a while. That's just kind of an odd thing. By the way, there's a little metaphor in here. Let him be wet with the dew of heaven. You've camped, right? Have you ever camped in a tent and you wake up in the morning and the outside of the tent's covered with dew? It would be very nasty if you didn't have that tent because you'd wake up in the morning exposed and just be drenched. So you like the tent. So this is a metaphor for saying instead of being shaded under the branches and the leaves of this tree, whatever is going to go past this, is going to exist past this, is going to be totally exposed to the elements. That's all it means. Totally exposed to the elements. And let his portion be with the beasts of the grass of the earth. The beasts of the grass of the earth are wild animals. So wild animals are the epitome of things that are exposed to the elements. They have no barns. They have no place to stay. So the idea here is that whoever he is someone who's going to be totally exposed to the elements and like a wild beast and have no covering, no anything. It's just exposed, just dropped off and exposed to the elements. The watcher goes on. Let his mind be changed from a man's, and let a beast's mind be given to him. So he is going to not only be exposed to the elements, he's going to be living like a wild beast outside, but his mind is actually going to be transformed to thinking like a wild beast. What? And let 7 periods of time pass over him. So this is going to be not just a short-term thing. This is going to be a while. 7 periods, we're not sure, maybe 7 years, 7 months, don't know, but it means it's not just going to be overnight. Some kind of weird transformation of being exposed to nature and the elements and thinking like an animal. And then this watcher says, the sentence is by the decree of the watchers, the decision by the word of the holy ones. So some entity from heaven in Nebuchadnezzar's mind that is outside of creation but watches over creation, in this being enters creation and says, this is what's going to happen. The tree is going to be cut down. Him, whoever is going to be turned into a beast. And then, oh, by the way, this is by the dictate of the people, beings, whoever who's in heaven that watch over humanity. And they're the holy ones. That is, they're separated from humanity. They're not sinful. So in Nebuchadnezzar's mind, this just means we have a representative from heaven who's doing this. Oh, okay. Okay. And the being goes on. And to the end that, here's the purpose of all of this, cutting down the tree and everything, that the living may know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will and sets over it the lowliest of men. What? Okay? So there's enough confusion here, and there's enough violence in terms of cutting down of this wonderful tree that no one's saying anything bad about. It sounds like a great tree, but the watchers from heaven come down and say, we're putting an end to this, cuts it down. And then also demeans whoever is involved with this tree and becoming like beasts or something like that. But the purpose, the watchers, the heavenly beings say this is the purpose, so that everyone might understand that the most holy God, the most high God, he rules the kingdom of God, men. This being rules the kingdom of men. Implication, as opposed to someone else, and gives his kingdom to whoever he wills, and sets over the kingdom, the lowliest of men. That is, this being, these watchers from heaven, set over the kingdoms of men who are pipsqueaks, who have no great qualifications, the lowliest of men. Okay, you're just going to have to stick that in your hip pocket for a while, because that's the dream. And that's what Nebuchadnezzar does when he finishes his description. This dream, I, King Nebuchadnezzar, saw. This is his way of saying, hey, this is exactly what I saw. I'm not kidding. I told you the exact truth. There it is. That's it. That's all there is. There ain't no more. Okay. So the scene turns to our friend Belteshazzar, otherwise known as Daniel. And you, O Belteshazzar, tell me the interpretation. Because all the wise men of my kingdom are not able to make known to me the interpretation, but you are able, for the spirit of the holy gods is in you. So what do you say? What is this? This wonderful tree provides food for all, shelter for the animals, birds can live in it, reaches up to heaven, it's expansive. What can be wrong with that? And then heaven comes down and chops it down, and then goes through some weird demeaning process with this person, turning him into a beast. And I mean, what a great loss, don't you think? This is what he's thinking. So he turns to Daniel and says, let's go. What is this all about? You ready? Well, you're going to have to wait for next time. Don't you hate that? I'm going to get fired if I do that too many more times. Stop watching TV programs like that. Yeah. You know those cliffhangers they do at the end of series? That's your cliffhanger for next week. Or a motivation to read it yourself. But I'm stopping here because you can't handle the truth of this yet. You can't, because there's something that we don't understand in this dream that they understood that you don't have. So we need to stop and get ourselves prepared so we can handle the truth next time we look at this. So that's what we're going to do for the next little bit of time we got left, is we're going to prepare ourselves, because you won't get it. You literally won't get it. So what I want to talk about from now until the time we finish here is I want to talk about something really engaging and stimulating. We're going to talk about trees. Okay, we're going to talk about trees from a biblical perspective, because we don't really have a good handle on trees. Many of us have trees in our yards. We know what a tree is. Come on. You know, Dorothy and I had a house that had like 9 fruit trees on it. We know what fruit trees produce, you know. So, I mean, we got trees down. What is it we don't got when it comes to trees that's relevant to understanding this particular dream? And what we don't got is a biblical view on trees. So what I want to do is stand back for a second, because as we do a biblical view of trees, you'll get an ancient understanding of what trees were and why in this particular dream, the tree is central to the picture of the dream. Okay? Central to it. So let me just step back for a second and let's think about trees for a second. And look at trees, especially biblically. And you know, when you do a study on trees in the Bible, one of the most astonishing things you find out is that in the account in Eden, when you go to Genesis 1, 2, and 3, trees are mentioned 14 times. Now, how many times are rose bushes mentioned? 0. How many times are grapevines mentioned? 0. How many times is grass mentioned? 0. No other plant. Trees, trees, and more trees. So when you go in the Garden of Eden, well, look, Genesis 2:9. Out of the ground, the Lord God made to spring up every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. The tree of life was in the midst of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So we focus on the tree of life and the tree of good and evil, knowledge of good and evil. But we forget about the fact that the whole garden is populated with trees. Nothing about grapevines, nothing about rose bushes. There's nothing about anything else. It's all trees, trees, and more trees. So you could say, if someone asked you, what is planted in the Garden of Eden? Trees. 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 And what are they good for? Food. And sight. They're lovely, okay? They're lovely. And shade if you get an oppressive sun. I mean, it's just really, it's a nice thing. It's a nice thing. In fact, the word paradise that we use in the New Testament is a Persian word. Now, we're talking about this area. It's a Persian word. And the Persian word stands for the cultured gardens that are in the back of nobles' houses. So when you go to their house, a king or something like that, you say, and he says, hey, let me take you out to my garden. You go out back. It looks like what, if you've seen those manicured, beautiful gardens of English estates and stuff like that, that is the word paradise in Persian language. Paradise means that. So paradise, when you think about that, is a well-cultured garden, which is largely trees. So that's paradise. Well, why would that image be so tied to the Garden of Eden? And see, this is where we miss our emphasis. Okay, there is the tree of life. That seems important. And there's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Yeah, but we forget about the fact that the whole place is occupied with more than just those two trees. There's trees everywhere that are just delightful to look at, and they're wonderful to eat from. It's the best thing ever. It's the best thing ever. So in a real sense, there is something about God's intended relationship with man that is accompanied by these trees. Ooh. Now remember, in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, he mentioned the fact that this tree was so profound, it fed all the creatures. Food's a big deal. Food's a big deal in Eden. So you got to start putting these things together. There's something about God's intended relationship with man pictured in Eden, and that we're going to at the end. Eden is also a picture of the end after the apocalypse and everything changes, new heavens, new earth. There's something about that trees are supposed to communicate to us as natural creatures, that we go, trees, yes, trees. Let's just keep dealing on this for a second. When you do flip to the end of the Bible, something in Revelation about the goal of what we're going to at the end of all things, which is wonderful and good in God's presence, there's still trees there. Revelation 22. Through the middle of the street of the city, we're talking Jerusalem, also on either side of the river, the tree of life with its 12 kinds of fruit. Yeah, yielding its fruit each month, and the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. Now that is some kind of tree. Well, that's the tree of life. Wait, where did I hear about the tree of life before Revelation? Eden. What? So, Eden was the intended relationship between God and man. Relationship, God and man. Trees there, planted by who? God. And then at the end of all things, in a sense, we return to that Eden idea of relationship with God. And what's there? Trees. So trees are trying to tell us something about our relationship with God. Okay? Will you allow me that far? Let's keep going here. Revelation 22:14. Blessed are those who wash their robes so that they may have the right to the tree of life, and that they may enter the city by the gates. That is, not storm the city over the walls, but go in because you're invited. So, the tree of life. Can I replace some phrase instead of tree of life? Because when I think about this good picture of what life is like with God, then you and I would almost always use the word heaven. And heaven for us means a good place. We're not sure exactly what's there, but it's a good place and God is there. And so it's wonderful. It's paradisey. And if you think paradisey, you're also thinking trees, and trees are showing up in Revelation. Ooh, okay. So I could say they have the right to salvation, to heaven, to life with God eternally. So there's something about the trees themselves that ending up become parallel, or at least informing, about what we get from God in relationship with him, what he's promised to us. The trees are always there. The trees are, and since we're natural creatures, we have to appeal back to what we know about trees. More than just structural trees, but food trees. I mentioned we had fruit trees in Spokane where we lived. We planted this little mini orchard of small-sized fruit trees. I didn't realize how much work fruit trees were, by the way. You got to prune them, you got to spray them, you got to thin them. It's like, these are real work. But there was one tree that was there. It was labeled as a pear tree when we got it from the nursery. And we thought, well, pears, we know what pears are, Pears are pears, right? Well, this one was mislabeled slightly. It was a pear, but it was an Asian pear, which is really unusual in the area. And Asian pears make these, at least in the varieties we get here, make these almost perfectly spherical pears, right? They're yellow and they're round. They're just round. They're not shaped they're not pear shaped. That was my pear shape. They're perfectly round. And also when they're ripe, they're still very, very hard. So with a normal pear that we know, Bartlett's and stuff like that, when they're getting close to being ripe, you give them just a slight squeeze. They just barely give, If they're not ripe at all, they're just like rocks. You squeeze them, there's nothing there. This one, we kept squeezing it, and it was still hard. And look how misshapen it is. It's round like a golf ball. And so we'd squeeze it. It never got soft. I think these things are never going to ripen. And then one day, we were leaving the house, we were getting in the car, and we looked over at these unripe pears, and they were being devoured by wasps. I mean, it was like a frenzy going on. And we're thinking, our pears are being eaten by, why are they eating these pears? They're not ripe yet. So we went over there, we shooed away the wasps, and we took one off and bit into it. Oh, it was ripe. And the wasps were trying to take them down as fast as they could. I mean, because they're Asian pears, they never got soft. So, yeah. But the amazing thing was, and then you got to step into our shoes for a second. Once you get the wasps off of it and you do a taste test and you bite into this pear, your knees go weak. I mean, it's like, wow, this is incredible. Have you ever picked a piece of fruit and that's happened to you? I mean, literally, it's like, oh, you almost need to sit down. I mean, it's remarkably good. It's remarkably good. The presence of God with trees that bear fruit that is remarkably good. See, there's an association going on here that God wants you to get. That you get because you've eaten fruit off of a tree. So there's something about relationship with God where these trees with the fruit are, that when you think that tree in your head, you think, remarkably good. Sweet to the taste. Absolutely free. Getting any associative hints yet? Let's keep looking. There's another Revelation passage, Revelation 22:19. If anyone, this is the warning, if anyone takes away from the words of the book of this prophecy, talking about Revelation, God will take away his share in the tree of life and in the holy city, which are described in this book. So Revelation, the end game where we're going, which is good with God in the end, is always symbolized by two things: the tree of life and the city of Jerusalem, the city of God, where God invites you in through the gates. You don't have to go take a ladder and go over the walls. He opens the gates and says, come on in. So that's the associative picture. It's the order and the civilization and the culture and the society of a city. Now, when we think cities, we think decrepit and dangerous, but their cities were the opposite. Cities were places of refuge. Outside the walled cities was where mayhem was. That's where the robbers were. That's where there was no enforcement of the law. If you want law and order and protection and safety and provision, you go to a city. So the end game God has for humanity, for those who give their lives to God, is a city where there's order and there's culture, there's community, there's society, there's protection, there's provision. It's everything that's wonderful about a city is what he's invoking in the end of Revelation. And everything that's wonderful about a tree is there. And who is responsible for that entire thing? God himself. And the trees are an integral part of telling you something about actually having you anticipate wanting to be there because of trees. Something about trees make you go, I want to be there. Why? Trees. 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 Okay? That's what we're talking about. Well, the other thing about trees, especially in the arid Middle East, is they're a welcome source of life in a very harsh land. And if you visit the Middle East, you'll notice that it's mostly rocks and dirt and sun. And it's harsh. It's really, really harsh. And so the problem is with trees have a hard time finding a way to root there. But if they root there, they are a wonderful source of two things, shade and fruit. Sometimes they're at an oasis. And we see that in Exodus because they went to palm tree oases because that's where water was. So when you see a tree in a distance, you've seen all those pictures of these guys stranded in the desert crawling on all fours, and they see the oasis in the distance, right? They see the palm trees. The palm trees are basically at a distance pointing to the fact that there's water here. The palm trees couldn't exist. And by the way, palm trees make date palms, make dates. So if you can crawl your way to that, you'll find water, you'll find shade, you'll find the sweetest things you've ever eaten in your life. It's a pretty good deal. So it's a wonderful source of life in a very harsh land. And here's one thing. They're kind of a symbol of hospitality because there's shade without having to have structures. There's no man-made structures to make the shade, but God made the shade by putting the tree there. Genesis 18, when Abram has his visitors, remember, from heaven, watchers in a way, like Daniel said, the angels who are coming to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. Genesis 18:8, the part of the hospitality, then he took curds and milk and the calf that he had prepared, and he set it before them, and he stood by them under the tree while they ate. Now see, he could have brought them inside his tent. He doesn't. He says, let's go outside and stand under the shade of this tree. That's the most hospitable place you could be. The inside of tents smell kind of weird. And you know why? Because they're made of goat's hair that are in the sun. I went to a goat's hair tent in Israel as a replica of what life was like. In fact, they called it the Abraham tour. You would go out there and they'd have this tent out there, and they'd serve you little drinks in the tent, and there was blankets on the sand. But the roof of the tent was just barely above my head. I'm 6 feet, so like about 6'3", there was the bottom of this hairy ceiling, and I was the tallest person in our group that was there. So I got close enough to the roof of that tent to go, oh boy. And so I walked around like this, and they said, why you walk around hunched over? I said, have you smelled that? Oh, I don't smell it. And you can't. It's kind of a funny deal because in the tents, the way the ceilings are inclined in the tents, that goat hair roof gets really hot in the sun, gets kind of stinky like a dead goat. And the smell, because of the thermodynamics inside the room, the hottest air actually goes up the incline of the roof and goes out the front. And so it never makes it down to the bottom. But if you're like 3 inches from the roof, you can smell it. So anyway, under the tree, great hospitality. A tree is a place of great hospitality. We finished looking at Deborah at Mother's Day. Where was she when you opened the story? Under a tree. It's not only a place of hospitality, it's a place of justice. That's what Deborah was doing. She was settling civil disputes. Trees are really great. And as a reminder, who plants these trees? God does. They're also hospitality not only because of the shade, but they're hospitality because of the fruit. It's food without farming. Get that one under your head for a second. It's food without farming. Food without farming. Deuteronomy 8, they're describing the promised land that's coming up, that they're going to be going into, Deuteronomy 8:8. What is it? Well, it's a land of wheat and barley, of vines, grapes, and fig trees, tree, pomegranates, tree, land of olive trees, trees, and honey. Bees. There's a verse that says drink goat milk? Okay, if you find it, let us know. Okay, yeah, okay. So anyway, trees, trees, trees. He says they're basically saying you're going to go into a land and you're going to benefit from all these trees. And by the way, you didn't have anything to do with making these come into existence at all. By the way, too, I've put in a plug for fig trees. Now put in a plug for pomegranates. If you go to Israel, there's almost always vendors on the street who will give you iced pomegranate drinks. And it is, whoa, it is incredible. Now, most of us look at pomegranates, when you see them in the store, and when you open them up and you say, how in the world do you process this? It's just a whole bunch of seeds with red jelly around them. I mean, it's like, this is impossible. There are better, easy ways. But these vendors on the street, kind of like orange juice vendors, they have some kind of machine thing, and they do this. And they do, but this beautiful red juice comes out of it. It trickles over the ice, and you sip that, and you're like, you have to sit down. I mean, it's just remarkable. That's the pomegranate. It's just remarkable. It's happiness in a cup. And there's a lot of vendors doing that. So if you ever go to Israel and you see these guys serving these clear plastic cups with red drink, it's not Kool-Aid. It's pomegranate juice. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And so while I'm putting in plugs, the other tree that's in the picture, olive trees. Do you know how healthy olives are for you? Extraordinarily healthy for you. I mean, they've got things in there that almost no other plant has for you. Plus, they're versatile. Not only can they feed you, but they can light your house. So, I mean, trees are great. Trees are great. And the trees in Israel are just remarkably great that way. Remarkably great. So I just want to emphasize this. This is food without farming. That is, you walk up to a tree, and it's a fruit tree that you recognize. Say, a fig tree. And you recognize the time of year that it is, and you expect that all I have to do to benefit from this tree is walk up to it and pick it. I don't have to plant it. I don't have to fertilize it. I don't have to prune it. I don't have to do any of that stuff. It's free food, and by the way, it's extraordinarily good free food. And I would strongly encourage you, if you've never had a fresh fig as opposed to a dried fig, they are just, you have to sit down. They are so sweet. They look kind of ugly when they're not dried. The flesh inside of a fig looks red. It looks like it's bleeding, sort of. It's kind of weird. It's about the same color as pomegranates, but it's stickier and it's sweeter. But the fruit looks like it comes from another planet, and when you taste it, you're sure it comes from another planet because nothing on earth tastes like that. So anyway, it's food without farming. It is an extraordinarily sweet and luxurious offering to you that you had no hand in creating, but it's yours for the taking. And it's planted by God. Getting the connections yet? Let's do a little bit more. Well, we need another aspect. We need to be tree experts before we can understand the explanation. The other thing about trees that everyone agrees on is that they're resilient, they're immovable, they are unbothered, most trees. I mean, if a tree can survive in the Middle East, it's because it's found a source of water, and no matter what happens in the landscape, whatever drought comes and stuff like that, the tree goes, I don't care. It's resilient. It's unbothered. It's always there. You cannot move it. It's there. And the nice thing about that is that this source of incredible, luxurious gift to you, both in shade and in fruit, is something that will never be moved. It's always dependable. Unless, like during the time of Jesus, he comes up to a fig tree and there's no fruit on it. And so he curses it. And it's dead. It's withered in a day. And the apostles are totally blown away by that. Look at this today. Yeah. So, and Jesus uses that image about the fact that, it's almost never happens during that time, especially with figs, that you see a fig during a certain time of the year, you look at the leaves, you go, it's got fruit. I mean, if you garden, you understand. You see your plants from a little distance, if I go up to that plant, I'm going to find tomatoes on that plant. I'm going to pop them. Ooh, yeah, okay. I mean, you know what it looks like. And Jesus sees a tree that is promising fruit because of the way it's leafed out, and you would expect it to have fruit. 99 out of 100 times it will have fruit in that condition, and he goes up to it and it's fruitless. It's just an extraordinary improbability that it would be like that. It should be the other way. It should have fruit on it. And so Jesus uses that as a picture of the fact that the nation of Israel has all the appearances of providing sweet fruit, not just for the nation, but for the world. But it doesn't have anything. It's barren. It's barren. And it's so unnatural, like a fig tree without its fruit. Use that as an example. But normally they're resilient, they're immovable, they're unbothered. They are a permanent statement by God for your behalf. Permanent. See it? Now I'm going to quote this to you in a second. Oh, here it is. It's also planted by another. And so I'm quoting Song of Songs. You mean that sex book? Okay, don't worry about that for a second. But I quote this to illustrate something about being planted by another, planted by God, because the tree itself is it's a statement of love. And so even in the incredible book of love, the Song of Songs by Solomon, where there's courtship and there's relationship, there's intimacy, there's romance. If you've never read this book, it's just really great. But there's metaphors that talk about what those things are like. And so in this, when Solomon writes this, he chooses to use the wonderful image that we've been painting about trees from a biblical perspective to talk about a nice romantic turning point in the story between the man and his beloved. And he uses this wonderful picture of this tree. And he says, the fig tree ripens its figs, and the vines are in blossom, and they give forth fragrance. Arise, my love, my beautiful one, and come away. That is just so darn romantic. So darn romantic. In fact, we sang that at our wedding. That last line, at least, not about the figs being in fruit. By the way, my advice is not to sing at your own wedding. Not because it's not lovely. It was lovely. Arise, my beloved, my beautiful one, and come along. Remember that? See? I'm choking up right now. But it caused everyone in the audience to choke up. And when you're trying to sing a song, a trained voice chokes up when it hears other people choke up. You can hear people going, and you start to go, all right. We got through it. It was a nice moment. I don't want to mean that. It was a nice moment, but it was hard emotionally to get through. It was really nice. But Solomon, he writes, this says, there's a beauty and a wonderful something about a fig tree that ripens in its figs. I mean, the promise is so profound, and the fruit is so sweet. It's like life is looking good now. The fig tree is ripening. And not only that, but there's blossoms in the air, and the vines are in blossom. I mean, it's like it's a romantic picture using natural sources of a love that now is coming to fruition. That's a pun. But this, and then so at that point in the story in Solomon, he says everything is set. The figs are there. The fragrance is there. The vines. So, arise, my beloved, let's go. See the picture? Because the Song of Songs isn't just about a man and a woman. It's about God and mankind. It's about God and mankind. It's about the love story bigger than any love story that you'll ever understand. This God who loves humanity to such a degree, for God so loved the world. Remember? But in Song of Songs, it's meant to picture a romantic enticement of humanity itself from God's perspective. And in that, part of painting that picture of the romantic enticement of the God who loves you so much, there's trees. There's also fragrance. There's also vines, but there's trees. Yeah.
Can I tell you something really annoying?
Okay, make it annoying.
Proverbs 27:27. I might be telling you pardon me. When it comes to goat milk,
Oh, we're back to goat milk.
I love goat milk because it's yummy, but only if they are eating grass. If you feed them grain, it will taste nasty.
Okay. So this is a PS on the goat milk. Do goat milk that comes from grass, not from something. Okay. You wrecked my train of thought, but that's okay. That's okay. We'll come back to this. We'll come back to this. Yeah. So again, in this romantic context, God is wooing you through trees. You ever thought about that? He's wooing you through trees, just like the suitor in Song of Songs is. So if you stand back and you look at this, and this is the point we need to make before we get to the dream, is the fact that we're talking about trees that were the intended environment of Eden, where God would walk with man and they would love one another, and it would be rest. It would be wonderful. It also returns back in the Golden Revelation, because that hasn't gone away. The Eden idea is still there at the end of time, and what God calls us to is life with him after this existence. Also, the tree is a wonderful source of life in a harsh land. A tree is a source of, not only is it shade from the stress of the sun, but it's also food. And not only just food, it's wonderful food. And not only wonderful food, but it's free food at no cost at all. Free. It's free. And not only that, is the presence of these trees is resilient and it's permanent, and no one's going to move it. That is, the blessing of what this thing is something that's planted so firmly that no one can take it out. It is an offer by God that no one can push against. It's there, too bad. It's free food. It's free shade. There. And it's planted by God. So in a bigger sense, when you think about trees, when the ancient folks during this time, Old Testament and even in Persia at that time, when they think about trees were an extraordinary gift to mankind, planted by God for our benefit in ways that not only sustain us, but cause us to greatly have deep life, shade in the sun, and sweet fruit. I mean, I see myself opening up my lawn chair under this gigantic tree, under the shade of it, the light breeze that goes through, and I just reach up like this and pop off a fig and go, this is the best thing ever. And God did that. And you're still sitting in a harsh land. It's an island of goodness in a harsh land. Steve's waving his arm.
Jeremiah 17:7-8. Blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in him. They'll be like a tree planted by the water that sends out its roots by the stream. It does not fear when heat comes. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in the year of drought and never fails to bear fruit.
Jeremiah 17, 7 and 8. Also Psalm 1. Yeah. So that's the interesting thing. Not only are trees that kind of a singular blessing from God in a harsh land, he says that when we put our trust in God, suddenly become like those trees. Sweetness, shade, sturdiness. Wow. See, trees are much bigger than just something you cut up and make lumber out of in an ancient idea. Trees are actually a symbol of God's grace to us. That's what it is. His loving grace toward us. Here we are in a land that we deserve nothing. It's harsh to start with. It's destroyed by sin. Is there any good that's left here? And God says, here's a tree. You can sit under this tree and you can eat the fruit of it. In fact, and here's kind of a challenging thought, could it very well be that at the fall in the Garden of Eden, where all those great trees were, God took those trees after the fall in the Garden of Eden, in this fallen creation that happened because of sin with Adam and Eve, and took the idea of the tree and he says, you know what? I'm going to remind them of what I'm asking them to participate in my love, and I'm going to put trees here. It's kind of like the cosmic Johnny Appleseed idea. But forget Johnny Appleseed. This is God saying something as singular as the blessing of trees, no matter where you go in this harsh land, I want you to look at those and go, God has a great intention to bring luxurious life to me. And it says it in that tree. In the same way that at the fall in the Garden of Eden, we have a rainbow when we get to Noah, right? We have a rainbow. And what does the rainbow show us in nature? It says, well, God's not going to destroy mankind through water again. I think that in a similar way, the trees from Eden are sprinkled throughout all creation, and they're there in order to continue to invite us into the grace of God. So every time I see a tree, you're going to think I'm crazy. Every time I see a tree, and I enjoy something about it. I was pruning one this weekend, and I love the fact that I was in the shade of that tree while I was pruning it. And while I was pruning, I'm going, this is the best place to be. I'm pruning trees. There's a light breeze coming through. The sun was beating on me, unlike yesterday where it was cold. But I mean, it was, and I enjoyed the protectiveness of this tree. And while I'm there, I'm saying, this is a hint of the grace of God and his love for me and what he intends for me to live with him forever. Eden and Eden revisited at Revelation. Every time I see a tree, I think about that. Every time I see a tree, I see it as kind of like a sprinkled calling card from the God of heaven who loves his humanity and says, see this tree? That's my grace. See this tree? It's my grace to you. Do you want more of who I am? Do you want more of the sweetness of life free to you? Do you want more of the security of the permanence of this tree that can't be moved? Do you want something that will shield you from the toil that comes from all life's pressures, the sun that beats on you in terms of life's demand? Do you want more of that? Because this tree is a little island in the middle of a very harsh land trying to tell you that I still love you and this can be your life with me. That's the message of trees. That's the message of trees. And if we don't have that in our head, we don't understand this dream when it gets interpreted in a second. Because we just see it as lumber. And it's not lumber. Again, in the Shel Silverstein kind of poem, he points to the fact that this tree itself not only loves the small boy who grows up with it, but it provides to him over and over, even to the point where it gives its life for the child, this tree. Now there's some theology in that. Because the tree itself is a living, microscopic picture of the grace of God in our lives. That's what we got to get in our heads. Now you're ready to get the interpretation. You weren't ready before. You weren't ready before. By the way, in the dream also, he points out a couple other aspects of trees we have to remember. Trees not only provide shade for animals who are exposed to the elements. They can find less exposure to the elements by being under the tree. That's good. But also birds of the air. Birds of the air love to be in trees. For a couple of reasons, but one of the most profound one is predator birds have a harder time getting to trees that are perched in large trees. And so they're a place of refuge. They're like a home. We see this in our backyard all the time, although we have a falcon who can defeat the trees. We've watched that graphically. But there's, you're going to say, Doug? Yeah, trees are made for little boys to climb to. They're just a remarkable, unexpected, gracious gift of God in the midst of a harsh place. That's the trees we're thinking of. Yeah, Dottie.
I always heard the olive tree.
Olive trees.
It's different than what it was before. They say Christ was hung on the wood, the olive tree, and God cursed it so it would never be big enough to turn into a tree.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true. That's an interesting thing. However, I was going to close with the point that you're making, because what is the significance of the fact that Jesus was killed on a tree is what it says. You know, it's the wood from the tree, but they continue to use the word tree. What's the significance of that, now that you know what trees signify? And I'll just let you brew on that until next week. But there is something there. That's all I'm saying. There's something there. And for inquiring minds want to know, you want to ask yourself, if trees are such a great picture of the grace of God, the luxurious, unexpected, unearned grace of God, then why was Jesus hung on a tree? We'll let you brew on that until next week, because I think we're done. Are we done? Next week we will not be in here. will be under the trees. I know, what a miraculous coincidence that was. We'll be under the trees. And so I want to challenge you while you're there under the shade of those trees, because we look for shade, is when you see that tree, can you look at that tree and thank God and say, gosh, God, this is a picture of you. And you have put this here for my benefit. And I'm loving every minute of it. Will you be the shade in my life right now, like this tree? So, I mean, this is what I go through every time I see a tree, whether it's got fruit or not. It's got shade. It's got benefit. I mean, it's just wonderful things. So while you're there at Church in the Park next week, thank God for who he is and how this tree tells you who he is and what he's like. That's a big deal. So, yeah, we won't be in this room next week. So come out to the park, 10 a.m., same start time over at the park. We're in the grass just west of the pond. So park almost anywhere and come up to the west side of the pond. There's just very deep shade right there, and we'll enjoy just being out there together. So that's what we'll do. We do it the last Sunday of every month in the summer. So June, July, August, we'll do that. So we'll be there next time. Giving you ample opportunity as our outdoor lab to learn, to apply what you've learned today. Jim's being silly again. Yeah. Okay, I think we're going to sing. Yeah, we're going to sing after this. Let me just pray. Our Father in heaven, you are so gracious toward us. Your shade shelters us. Your food is free and luxurious and delightful to the tongue. You are so good to us in so many ways. And Father, we thank you that you've sprinkled among us reminders in trees of your profound insistence, your durable insistence to show to a fallen mankind about your grace and your love toward us. And God, I know that in so many cases that connection is not made with people. They're thankful for the shade and they're thankful for the fruit, but they don't know who to be thankful to. And so, Lord, we pray for those folks who haven't come to understand who you are, and pray that those trees would be a testimony to that. And we pray that these trees would be a testimony to us about the enduring determination on your part to make your love and your grace toward us known, even when we least expect it. And we know that we can't pay for it, and we didn't prepare for it. But nevertheless, you come into our lives and you provide blessing when we least expect it. And the tree is that for us. So we thank you for all this now. Give us understanding, too, about Christ being crucified on the tree, and give us understanding about Nebuchadnezzar's dream. What does that mean? And so we look forward to coming to that understanding next time. So thanks in Jesus' name. Amen.